Hello, everybody, and a warm welcome to the second session of Tapas Project Shaala. This is day one, session two. I'm Preeti Vikram, the founder of Tapas Progressive School. Absolutely excited to be here. We've just had a very scintillating session from Vishnu Karthik, and the next one promises to be absolutely fantastic too. Um, this person that we are having next is somebody that I have revered for since when I can remember, having been an educator. So I want to introduce him to you with a small presentation of our own. And I'm hoping that the little story that I have to tell you is something that you enjoy. At Tapas, when we looked at how learners are viewing their own learning, how our students are viewing their own learning, we realized that they were very disconnected from the content that they had to learn, why they had to learn, and what would be the purpose and how can they track this learning. One of the most effective ways in which we have made sure that students are empowered with their own learning, they are responsible for their own learning, is through introduction of something called as the progression grids. Now, what this essentially means, these are very big sounding words called progression grids, but what this essentially means is we looked at all the learning objectives that they have, that they need to accomplish by the end of a particular period of time, and then we translated those into statements that students can themselves look at and understand where they are and mark themselves, assess themselves on where they stand in this progression, right? This has been a very interesting journey, and this is something that we have started recently, and I want to show you some examples of what this looks like. So we looked at the learning objectives. We asked the students to mark themselves on, are they at the beginning level, developing level, proficient level, or exemplary level. First of all, we introduced this, and we were so excited to see that students are very truthful in how they mark themselves. They're not marking themselves as exemplary in everything that they do. We also asked them to show evidence of where they are able to show this. So what you saw was earlier English, and this was a progression grade for math. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit because one of the students said, I want more homework, because they realize that they need more practice. Isn't that what we want? Some more examples of the progression grids. Learners were able to also indicate their proficiency level with some images, and I think they are able to represent themselves really beautifully here. I'm going to show you a few more. This is a lot more colorful. Her personality is coming through in this, and I think you all can see that there is an IDK that's repeating multiple times. She just doesn't know why she is at that level, but she knows that she's at that level, and that's saying a lot about how they view themselves and their learning journeys. The reason I wanted to put these slides up is because I wanted to show to you that one idea of completely decentralizing, completely passing the power on of managing our learning to them, to ourselves, and in this case, passing it on to the learners themselves, is an idea that Ron Berger has always spoken about. By giving children the power to manage their own learning, I think we are able to empower them to carry on and to be rigorous about their own learning process. And that's why we have Ron Berger as somebody who's going to be joining us for today's session. Ron, a very, very warm welcome. Good morning. I know it's quite early for you, and we're very, very thankful that you have joined us for this session today.
Thank you, Preeti. I'm honored to be here with you all this evening.
A little bit about Ron is Ron is a acclaimed national and international keynote speaker focused on inspiring a commitment to quality, character, and citizenship in students. He is the senior advisor at EL Education, a non-profit school improvement organization that partners with public schools across America. He is also the author of best-selling education books, which I have read, including An Ethic of Excellence, A Culture of Quality, Leaders of Their Own Learning, Transformational Literacy, Management in the Active Classroom, Learning That Lasts, and We Are a Crew, a teamwork approach to school culture. He was a professor at Harvard Graduate School of Education, where he did his graduate work. He founded and directs the website Models of Excellence, the Center for High Quality Student Work, which holds the world's largest collection of beautiful K 12 student work. Ron was a public school teacher and master carpenter in rural Massachusetts for over 25 years and received the Autodesk Foundation National Teacher of the Year award. Ron, it's an absolute joy to have you here. Thank you so much, and stage is now yours.
Thank you so much, Preeti, and welcome to all of you. I hope I'll be able to share some ideas that are helpful to you this morning. I'm going to start with some slides and share some stories about why I feel that, as Preeti said, having students be leaders of their own learning makes a vast difference for them, and specifically talk about using critique, peer critique, expert critique, teacher critique, to improve our work, and self-critique, as you saw from those students. And I'm going to show a video of a classroom in America as a model. And then the second half of the time, I will be in conversation with Preeti about questions about how that could apply to the context for all of you as teachers, as parents, as community members in this. So I'm in my 50th year in education. So I've been at this a really long time. And my passion for 50 years has always been around the fact that I think we vastly underestimate the ability of students to do beautiful work, high quality work. And so today I want to speak to you about why that matters and why critique matters in creating high quality work. One of the first books I wrote, called An Ethic of Excellence, has this quote. And really it's about the fact that we are all getting students ready for life, whether they go to university and graduate work or whether they go directly into work. We are trying to eventually get them ready for life. And when they are done with their schooling and they enter their adult lives, they're never again going to be judged by exam scores, by exam results. That is not what life is about. That's the way we measure schools. That's the pressure students are under in schools, but it's not what life is about. In life, our students will be judged and valued by two things: by the quality of human being that they are they a good person, and by the quality of their work. And it doesn't matter what profession or what job or what career or what role in the world they play, the quality of their work will be what matters. And so I feel like schools should be organized around these two things. How do we have places that cultivate good human beings who have a great work ethic and who have super high standards for the quality of what they do? This kind of ownership of learning and desire to get critique and get better is true for every student I meet anywhere in the world. I travel all over the world, meet with schools and teachers and students, and I've never found a student who wasn't passionate about getting better. It's just that passion is not always connected to their academic work. So when you look at these kinds of things like cricket or robotics or football or drama or dance or music or chess or Model UN or debate, students that are on the athletic field, on the pitch, or in a competition, or in a performance of a play, of a musical, they care deeply about doing well. And they care deeply about doing well to the point that they own their own ability in that. Like, they want to get critique all the time. They get critique from their friends, they get critique from their director, from their coach, from their teachers. They are always on a journey to get better. And if I meet one of these students and I ask them, what are your strengths right now in your instrument, in violin, in chess, in robotics, in cricket, whatever. If I ask them, what are your strengths? Every single student I've met with can tell me exactly what their strengths are. And if I say, and what are your challenges? What are your weaknesses right now in robotics, in Model UN, in debate, in dance, in football, whatever, they can tell me exactly what they're not so good at yet. And honestly so. And then if I say, what is your growth edge? What are you trying to get better at right now? They can say, oh, I'm actually working on this specific thing in my singing, in my playing of my instrument, on the football pitch, on the cricket pitch. Like I know exactly what I'm working to get better at. That's ownership of learning. My vision and our vision in the nonprofit that I work for is to say, could schools be more that way with everything, with academic work, where kids can say, exactly, this is what I'm good at in my reading, in my mathematics, in my history, in my science. This is what I'm working at getting better. And those forms that Preeti just shared with you from Tapas are perfect examples of kids knowing, yes, this is exactly what I need to work on, and I know what my next steps are. So that's the kind of ownership we're looking for. That might mean multiple drafts, because in life, we don't do something in one draft. If you're doing a report for legal purposes, a scientific report, if you're writing a novel, if you're creating blueprints for a building, if you're doing anything in the world, you're going to do multiple drafts, multiple practices and performances to get ready for it, and you'll get critique along the way. And so we need a framework for students as it's not just get it done and hand it in, but it's starting the journey of getting something great, and it's going to take a bunch of different iterations, lots of practice or rehearsals along the way. So I want to tell you the story of a student whom I had, who did this cross-sectional view of a cave home. Now, it's not a product that you might care about, or it's a strange product to share, but the story behind it is really interesting. So this is a cross-sectional view of like a cave underground that people live in, sort of a fantasy cave, but also like way back before people had homes, when there were cave people, and people lived in caves. The story of this journey is the journey of this girl. Her name is Jamie, and she was a sixth grade student. So in Britain, they would say year 7 student, whom I had. And she lived rurally. I live way out, far from cities, in the countryside. And Jamie lived right next to the school where I taught, in my rural school. And this was Jamie's horse. She didn't have a lot of money, but through her babysitting work, through working as a babysitter for local people, she was able to raise the money to buy her own horse and to care for her own horse. So she came from not a wealthy family. She just had a single mom and siblings, and they lived in a trailer out in the woods. But she had this horse, Foxy, and she rode it competitively, and it was the center of her life. Now, Jamie was one of those students who, to me, was like the most perfect person you could ever have. She was responsible and creative. She was a great problem solver. She was a wonderful, respectful person with everyone in the world. And she was the most sought after babysitter in my community, because everyone wanted her taking care of their children. In school, however, she also had a different side, which was that she had special education needs. And so reading and writing and mathematics came with extreme difficulty to Jamie. And so she struggled very much in school and always felt like she could never be enough like she was in real life. In real life, she was a star. In school, she struggled. This is Jamie on the left when she was a first grader and she published her first book. And you can see she's very proud, because if students own their work, if they publish their own work, if they do some project where they feel like, I did this myself, even as a struggling student, you can see how proud she was there on the left. But when she was a sixth grader and we went cave exploring together as an outward bound experience on the first day of school, she then the next day had to draw a cross-sectional view of a cave home. And this was her first draft. And she was really confused by it. In fact, when she finished this draft, she cried, because she said, I don't understand how to do this. I don't understand figure and ground. I don't understand cross-section. Everything you explained, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how to draw above ground and underground. I don't know how to show where there's space and where there's rock. Like it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how to do this. Other kids can, but I can't. And I tried to wait through her tears. And I said, Jamie, that's okay. We'll pin it up on the wall and you'll get critique from your classmates. And then it will be better. And she said, I'm ashamed. I don't want it pinned up in front of my classmates. And I said, that's all right. You can get critique privately from a friend. So she chose her friend, Nicole. Her friend, Nicole, re-explained cross-section and re-explained how to draw this. And Jamie sat down then and did a second draft where you can actually kind of tell that there's an above ground and a below ground, and there's actually separate spaces for these people to live underground. And she felt pretty good about this piece. She's like, this is way better thanks to the teaching that my friend Nicole gave me. And so the next time we pinned up work for critique, she wanted this pinned up for critique. And kids gave her some compliments on it and some pushes about how to get stronger. But the piece of critique that meant the most to her was there was a boy that she had a crush on in class that she sort of had romantic interest in, a handsome boy. And he said he really liked the overlapping rocks at the top of her draft, which is something her friend Nicole taught her how to do. And so her third draft was all overlapping rocks because she was so pleased that she had gotten this critique from this boy that she had interest in. And when she pinned this up, the students said, we like the detail, but your second draft was better in some ways because it had more space for people to live in. And she said, but this is my third draft. It has to be my best. And they said, well, it's your best in some ways, but you lost some of the space for the family to live in underground in your draft. So she got very upset, but she went back and did a fourth draft where she kept the overlapping rocks, and then she added more space like she had in her second draft. She got pretty excited about it now. And she said, Mr. Berger, this is really working. Like, I feel pretty good about my draft. But my handwriting is not very good. And I know that you taught my older brother how to do calligraphy. Could you teach me calligraphy really fast? And I said, no, I can't teach it to you really fast. But if you're willing to use the light table in our classroom, which is a frosted piece of glass with lights underneath that you can use for tracing, you could trace calligraphy and it will make your writing better just by that practice. And so she lived next to the school. She would show up before school every morning and tap on the window. I would let her in early, and she would just trace for half an hour before school started to get her handwriting better. And after a half an hour of tracing, after 1 week, this was her calligraphy. And it's not perfect. If you do calligraphy in English, you can see it's inconsistent. But for most people, they would look at this and say, wow, that's beautiful writing. The most consistent is her name, Jamie, there, third from the bottom. But she really got a sense of her hand. And so when she did her final draft, even the lettering is well done. So her final draft was a really beautiful piece, not because it was easy for her, not because she was a natural and it worked right away, but because she got critique from her friends and got better and better each draft and did something she was really proud of. And when we had an exhibition of work, her work was up and she was so proud that her mother and her grandmother came to see the beautiful work she had done. And I want to give you an update on Jamie because Jamie went to high school and she was on a special education plan in her high school because she still had those same challenges, but she believed in herself because she had done a lot of beautiful work from first grade, second grade, third grade, and sixth grade. And so she graduated from high school, which her parents had not done and other people in her family had not done. And she went to university. She went to the University of Massachusetts, right near where I live and where she lives. And I went to her university graduation party. She majored in equine studies, horse management, and she got a degree so she could manage a horse farm. And I went to her university party and she brought me a big cup of beer and handed it to me. And she said, I'm a college graduate, a university graduate. Can you believe it, Mr. Berger? And I said, of course I can. I always thought you were amazing. And she said, yes, but I still have the same special needs. I still reverse letters and numbers at times. I still have those same problems. And I said, so how did you get through university? And she said, practice and critique and help from my friends. I just kept working on things until I got them right. And since I've been teaching forever, as I told you, and I live in a small town, I want to give you an update. That's the same girl, Jamie. She's not a girl anymore. She's in her late 40s. And she's married. Those are her two brothers, whom I also taught. She has a daughter who's a champion rider. She manages a horse farm, and she teaches adults with disabilities. And so she's gone on to have a really great adult life where she's shining, where she's helping other people. And she has those same special education issues that she had when she was young, and she gets right through them by persevering. So whatever project I had my students doing, they always went through drafts. When I taught kindergarten, students did self-portraits where you see the first draft up top and the second draft in the middle and the next draft below. And you see kids can get better and better and better and end up with something that they're deeply proud of. When kids design blueprints for houses, their first drafts were thoughtful but pretty crude. But then when they got critique on them, they would move them to scale, which became very complicated because they have to do the math to figure out square footage of rooms and make sure things are designed well and where they can add furniture and where they can come up with high quality blueprints. And so all of this is when kids do work that they are proud of, deeply proud of, it changes who they are. They're a different person. They're never that same person again. They have a different sense of what they're capable of doing. And so I'm going to end here with switching to a video because I'd like to take you into a classroom, not my classroom, but I'd like to take you into a classroom where this kind of work is everywhere. Thank you, Preeti, for queuing that up.
Baby African rock python soon passes a river, and a giant, starving, scaly crocodile rises out of the green water on its big short legs and bounds toward her. Crocodiles are her predators.
And around. Well, this is a pretty cool.
When students are feeling excited and empowered by what they are learning, it creates the right conditions for producing really high quality work. And getting really high quality work from every student means they have to go through a process of critique and revision. We began thinking about our scientifically accurate drawings of our snakes by looking at models done by kids from earlier years.
What are some stars we could give about Goodness's snake shape? Some compliments, some kind critique. Maxwell.
I like how he wrote the head and the tail where it's supposed to be.
Students worked on one aspect of illustration at a time, starting with their snake shape.
I want you to now think about stairs. What are some stairs, some things that he could work towards in his next draft? Turn and talk.
Yeah, and I think he should make the head, because it kind of looks like it's sagging down a little bit, so it can make it a little bit round.
I wanted students to not only understand how to look carefully like scientists at the work, but also be able to enhance their ability to give critique and feedback by using our rubrics.
Okay, if the target's met, that means that in every single place that the lines are smooth. Do you see some smooth lines? Where do you see some smooth lines? Okay. Do you see smooth lines everywhere? Can you point a few lines where they're not so smooth?
There.
Okay, so did she hit the target for that? Okay, so is she getting started?
I've been traveling around the country for the past 10 years with a story called Austin's Butterfly about the power of critique and feedback. And that story has become a phenomenon in a way. It has taken off internationally. Tens of thousands of students and teachers have found it a provocation to create beautiful work. It's not bad, and it is a butterfly, but does it look exactly like this? No, and people often ask me, what would it look like if that Austin's Butterfly process was always there in a classroom? What could a classroom look like? And I'm not sure I've ever seen a classroom that's a better example of that than this classroom.
Would you agree that the size, how wide the snake
We have three
is
things
the
that we
same
always
until it
ask
gets to
kids
the
to do
tail?
when we're doing a critique. Be kind, be specific, and be helpful. And after the kids practiced, we began the process of going back and critiquing each other's work. And what I find is that in the beginning, kids are really great about being kind.
I like that you made like the tail
because I can see in the picture that it goes up.
So at the beginning, we don't see a lot of very helpful or specific feedback. Over time, as kids do this, and we're talking about over several weeks, as they practice, critique, and their drawings improve, you can see that the kids begin to recognize the value of that specific and helpful feedback.
Like right here is like more wider, so one thing I do to get it in proportion, I go like that, and then I go like that, and then I erase the lines, and then I just make it how my fingers were. And the nugget of space here should be a little bit smaller. And the negative space here could be bigger. So
I also needed to be able to sit with kids individually to help them improve their ability to give critique. So I needed a process in my classroom to give kids more independence in their work.
But some of you yesterday finished a draft and were really hoping to get some critique from peers. For example, Marguerite finished one of her snake shapes. So Marguerite would find her name. This is Marguerite Asian Rock Python. And what Marguerite would do is she would move her name to being ready for a peer critique. Anybody else who's ready for a peer critique would move their name to ready for a peer critique.
I've used the project board with kids for a long time, and that helps them become the co-managers of the critique process. They can see where anyone is in the classroom at any time, and I can see where anyone is in the classroom at any time, and then they can choose a partner to go and do critique with. It's great because it means kids aren't always going to their friends. It's great because they can take more ownership over the critique process themselves. Over time, we focused on other physical features like scales, patterns, and color. And along the way, we worked with different experts who taught the kids specific techniques.
So sometimes we're going to see just plain old circles. Sometimes do you see ovals?
yeah, I see diamonds.
Ooh, oh my goodness, like perfectly perpendicular diamonds, like that?
And for each new aspect of their illustration, we created a rubric and had opportunities for critique and feedback.
I like how your scales are going to the direction of where the body is. Like something that you can work on, like a stair, is trying to make all the scales the same size. Not like smaller. I had to make them big because you know how it's facing towards Toronto.
Getting kids to do their best work is what learning expeditions are all about. It's not just about doing it when we're doing our high-quality artwork. We take the same process, then we can apply it to the way we craft our written stories. Or in our school, we can do the same thing when we think about all the music that's essential in our school. Learning how to do your best work and learning that that happens through a process of critique and revision is very empowering for students. It sets them up for success in any academic or personal venture in the future.
Instead of a triangle. But just make it a little bit bigger, not just that bump. Yeah. Not really bigger. See if I trace it.
Thank you. Thanks for being willing to hear my passion for this. And Preeti, I invite you in to have any questions that you'd like to share, to have a conversation about this idea.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Ron. I think the single most powerful idea that we are taking away is that children will want to become better at whatever they are doing, and that we are enabling that through the critique and through giving feedback that's kind, specific, and helpful. And I think this is also one of the cornerstones at my school, Tapas, and there's so much of learning that we have taken up from your work. So I do have a few questions. While I'm going to ask, I invite the audience also to type their questions out in the comments, and we will keep visiting those questions and asking Mr. Berger these questions as we go along. So for me, Ron, this is the most important question I had for you. You speak of beautiful work and that children are capable of getting better and better at their work. If that's the case, then why do so many schools quietly settle for mediocre work? I mean, why are we saying it's okay? Why do you think that is?
Well, there's a number of reasons, Preeti, for that. And it's not the fault of the school leaders or the fault of the teachers. It's the system we have of seeing the purpose of school. If we stop and think as teachers, as leaders, as parents, like, why do we have school? It's to get kids ready for life. It's to get kids ready to be citizens, to be workers, to be husbands and wives and parents, to contribute to a society. Like, that's why we have school. But once you get into working in a school, the purpose becomes to prepare kids for exams. And that takes over everything, because if the exam scores are bad, if the results are not good, then the students are upset, the parents are upset, the teachers are upset. And so it ends up narrowing everything to seeing school, even though no one wants to admit it, as a place to prepare for exams. And that becomes very narrow, and it becomes about coverage. Have we covered this? Have we covered that? Have we covered this concept in mathematics, this concept in history, this concept in literacy? Like, it becomes, we have to get through, we have to cover things. And if your emphasis is on coverage rather than doing things well, then you're always in a rush. And you can't slow down and think, this thing we're going to do well. And I think for students, often in all of their years in school, the things they remember most are, but it wasn't that way when I was in the school orchestra. Because when we had a concert, we spent weeks and weeks practicing for that one concert. We took our time to do it well. When I was in a school play, we spent weeks on, preparing for that presentation. When we were on a school team or a club team in athletics and sports, we practiced and practiced and practiced to get ready to be our best during a game. If we're on the chess club, if we're in the robotics team, if we're in the Model UN team, we get ready to do it really well. So every student knows what it's like to put the time in to do it well. But then when it comes to regular math work or writing work or reading work, we're rushing always. We're not preparing to do something really well.
That's beautifully put. And I think we are constantly worried about coverage. And you're right. I think the Indian school educators identify with that, because we are constantly running to finish the syllabus. And
Right.
so unfortunate that we don't pause enough to give space for critique and reflection and to get better. That's very well said, Ron. And there are so many questions flowing in. I am a little bit distracted by the questions. So I'm going to start with a few right now. Here's a big one. Swati is asking, what does planning of these projects look like? Are the rubrics of critique co-created with the students as we go along the project, or is the planning done before the project journey begins?
That's great. An excellent question. I think in most cases, the projects have to be planned a lot ahead of time, because the teachers need to make sure that the projects are meeting the standards, meeting the objectives that are required. And so the teacher plans the project ahead. But as soon as the students become a part of it, they start shaping what quality looks like. So the rubrics are most powerful when they're built together with the students. Let me use a very specific example. I showed home blueprints drafted by 5th and 6th grade students there. The way that those rubrics for quality were created were, I have models from former students of beautiful work. And so I planned the project of students designing a home and doing the blueprints. I knew which mathematical standards that was going to meet and which standards in other realms it was going to meet. But I didn't have the rubrics for quality yet, because the rubrics were so much more powerful when I put up beautiful work done by former students and done by professional architects. And I said, what is powerful here? What makes these good? And the students were like, well, this has to be like that. That's quality. That's the kind of quality we need. And we would make those lists, and they would build the rubric based on their vision of quality, looking at a model of excellence. And I just want to point out a real world thing, Preeti, where this happens all the time. If students are trying to get good at music or trying to get good at sports, they watch videos or watch television, they watch professionals who are great at their sport, and they want to be that way. They have a model of what they're aiming for. And I think students need models of great writing, great math, great science. They need to look at scientific journal articles and say, this is a great journal article. What makes it great?
Brilliant. And I think that allows them to also be part of the journey of creating those rubrics. So I think there's no better way to get their buy-in into being
Exactly.
assessed. There's
Exactly.
another question, I think, which is fundamental to where is the time, fundamental to how the school functions. Where is the time to draft and redraft, and but what do we do?
It is the biggest challenge for all of us. You're going to have to excuse me. I'm going to take a second here and put a shade up so that I'm not blinded by it's morning sunlight here coming in. Thank you. Time is always the biggest challenge for all of us. And we have to prioritize for a moment. We're not going to get through absolutely everything if we want to do a few things really well. And so at times we have to be in a survey mode. We have to cover a lot of things kind of lightly. Then we have to stop and pause and think, we got through a lot of concepts in history, in science, in mathematics, whatever, quickly. But this one is really an important concept, and we're going to stop and slow down and do this one really well. And this one is going to come up with a product that has multiple drafts. We can't do multiple drafts of every assignment. We can't have students do 5 drafts of everything they do. But we have to think this project, this assessment, this thing is so important that we're going to slow down for this one and do it beautifully. And so we can't do it all the time, but we have to carve out the time to do a few things really well.
Absolutely. And I think if we are intentional about it, we will be able to make time. I think it's as a community, we have to be intentional about this. The part 2 of this question that Sugandha has asked is, in fact, are adults good at going back to our work for redraft? I don't think we have that work ethic.
I actually think pushing us as teachers and leaders and parents to show that explicitly to students is really helpful. Students who are studying music or studying athletics or studying drama with a coach, with a director, know that their coach is not perfect, know that they have to keep practicing themselves. We as teachers and leaders need to show the students that also. We're trying this ourselves. We're trying to do some of the same growth as they are and be explicit about it. So if the students see us as continual learners who do multiple drafts of things, if we invite students to critique our lessons, invite students to critique our projects, and then we can say to students, I did this last year. I got a lot of critique from my students. It wasn't perfect. I've redone it this year. I'll look for your critique to make it better for next year. Students can see you as a teacher as a model of everyone needs to keep redoing things. If you invite professionals to your classroom, if they're an author, they're going to say, I did 20 drafts of this book. I can show you the stack of them. If they're an architect, they're going to say, we did 25 drafts of these blueprints. Every time we got critique, it had to change. In real life, things go through many drafts. And I think students should be aware of that. We should model that for them.
Absolutely. And I think that answers the next question I've put up. How do we extend the system of critique at home? I think you just answered that we have to show how we as adults are working on drafts even at home.
Absolutely. In fact, I had a parent say to me, I love that this critique work you're doing, but my son was critiquing my dishwashing the other day. And I got very upset with him. And then I said, well, why don't you try? And I critiqued his dishwashing. And then we laughed and we started thinking, what makes good dishwashing? And it was like, it started this whole thing of there's nothing we can do that we can't get better at if we can critique each other with kindness, with specificity,
Yes, be kind, be specific, and be helpful. Definitely. I think that's the way critique should be. Another question, which is, what's the downside of project-based learning? Could you please share some experiences that you felt was a perceived failure?
Yes, I look at project-based learning all over America and all over the world, and sometimes it's terrible. Like, I'll be very honest with you. Project-based learning, when it's poorly done, is as bad or worse than any traditional learning approaches. But when it's well done, it has the potential to be a transformationally powerful for students. When it's poorly done, there's many reasons why it could be poorly done. The first is the project itself may not be connected to the standards, the academic standards or the growth standards that you hope kids will achieve, and not focused on that, but just on creativity. If it's just be creative, do a project, but it's not connected to these are the kinds of literacy goals, objectives, mathematical goals or objectives, science or historical goals or objectives, artistic goals or objectives that we hope kids will get, then there's the chance that the project will be sort of fluff for kids, or that some students will get a lot out of it and others won't. If the project itself is grounded in the learning objectives, if it's grounded in then it has the potential to unlock those for students in a way that makes them engaging and real for them. But some projects are not done that way. Another reason projects can be weak is if there's not high standards for what is created. So a lot of teachers settle for, yeah, it was like really nice job, but it's not like we should have the highest standards for what students do at that age. It should amaze people. People should look at those projects and say, I can't believe kids of that age did that. And the way we get there is starting with models of beautiful, powerful work of students or professionals, and having students own that commitment to quality, and then thinking, I'm going to make it better, I'm going to make it better, I'm going to make it better along the way. So lower standards can make project-based learning very weak also.
Absolutely. Another question from Radha. She's asking, considering everything, including the paperwork other than the academics, how to handle the burnt out state of the teachers?
There's no easy answer to that. And I want to empathize with you. I was in the classroom myself for almost 30 years. And a couple of times in those 30 years, I took a break for a whole year. I went to graduate school at Harvard and took a break and studied with Dr. Howard Gardner there at Harvard, and it renewed me. 1 year I took a break because I needed more money for my family, and I built houses for a year. And I was making so much more money building houses that I thought, maybe I won't go back to teaching. But I missed it. I missed students. And so after a year, I went back into the classroom, but I was refreshed. So sometimes I think getting breaks to think and breathe can be helpful in the course of a career. But in the course of a year, even that burnout can happen just from there's so much work. For me, there's no one easy answer for that. But the main advice I would give all of us is to try to get off the treadmill of assigning work, correcting work, handing back work, assigning work, correcting work, handing back work, filling out our paperwork, filling out all the things other than academics, as this person said. And the way to get off that is to do 1 or 2 things a year that make you deeply proud. If you are directing your students in a play or coaching them in a great sporting event, you would be so proud when they succeeded. It's the same with an academic project. When your students go out into the community and test the water to make sure the water is not polluted, and you create a report that's then shared with the whole community and does a real community service, you are so proud of that. It's renewing for you. That doesn't make all the paperwork go away. It doesn't make all the harder parts of teaching go away. But it's that moment, a few moments of year where you feel so profoundly proud of what your students did is what renews things for you.
Absolutely. And I think you do see that there's a bit of gratification that comes from these that kind of helps us keep us going for the rest of the year.
Exactly.
I love this next question. How can parents and teachers collaborate on project-based learning?
Oh, I think if parents are not being tapped into, it's such a lost resource. Because I used parents all the time in my community to support the projects we were doing, and in so many different ways. So let me give some specific examples. We always use experts in our work, but the experts were very often the parents in our community, because the parents in our community are such a wealth of expertise in all the areas that they know through their professions and through their lives, that we had parents coming in all the time to explain things as our experts and to critique student work. It was so exciting for kids when parents would come in to help critique, and the kids would teach them their critique rules, and then the parents would help critique. Whenever we had presentations of learning, we had parents come in and sit as critique audiences. So I would have some moms come in or some dads come in, and I would say, here are 4 kids that need to rehearse for their presentation of learning. And this is the parent that's going to be your critique partner. And the kids were so excited to present to someone else's mom or dad and get critique from them about how to be better at it. We did lots of field work, and the parents came along with us on the field work. And in the field work, we'd meet local scientists, we'd meet local authors, we'd meet local mathematicians, we'd meet local government officials. And the parents were there with the students, chaperoning, but also learning along with them and helping them with their work. The more the parents are a part of things, the stronger the project-based learning is. And I'll end with this. In all the schools I work with in America that are part of our network, which is about 150 schools, students lead their own conferences for their families multiple times per year. So the parents come into the building, and then the students present portfolios of their work. This is how I'm doing on my mathematics. This is how I'm doing on my reading. This is how I'm doing on my science. Here are the projects I'm very proud of this year. Here are the things I'm struggling with this year. Here's how my character has been strong this year. Here's where I've had problems with my character this year. And they explain it to their parents. Even the little ones, even the kindergartners lead their own conferences, right up through high school students. And so parents are a part of the audience for, we're all in this together. We're all trying to support our students to become great together.
That's so beautiful. I think it's that village that is required to raise one child, right? And I think the parents and the school going hand in hand makes all the difference. And I'm so happy that whatever you've said, I feel like we are doing it at Tapas, and this is a self plug, right? I'm so proud of the work that we are doing, and I have to say, whether it was the point about the quality of character, quality of work, talking about critique and feedback, talking about the crew time, the book that you've written about crew, about students being masters of their own assessments. All of this is something that we have implemented, and I will be absolutely delighted if I can get you to come to Tapas and show
Great.
you the kind of work that we are doing. But I'm afraid that's the end of time that we have for today's session. There are a lot of questions, and Ron, if you're okay with it, we'd like to collate these and send you an email so we could post the responses back to the audience.
Great. And I'll finish, Preeti, by saying Niharika put a question in about what about clubs and extracurriculars. And I would just want to say those are so important to kids' lives, because for many students, that's the one place where they fully own their own growth and where they get regular critique and they know how powerful that is. Even if they don't have that chance in their regular classroom, any student that's a part of those extracurricular things knows, I'm trying to get good at cricket. I'm trying to get good at chess. I'm trying to get good at playing my violin. And I really need critique to get better. And so they really understand the value of it.
Absolutely. And for anybody who wants to see more of Ron's work, whether it's the website EL Education or from his own website of Models of Excellence, I think there's a lot of content that you can definitely look at. I'm going to remind all of you that we are going to have sessions the next 3 days as well. So I will invite all of you to come back and join us, and hit the notification button so that you get notified whenever we go live. I want to take this opportunity to thank Ron once again. This has been an absolute pleasure. And I was just telling Ron before the session started, for me, this is a fangirl moment. Being on the same screen as Ron and discussing all these things has been really fabulous for me. It is personally a moment of joy. So thank you so much, Ron, once again. And I hope that we get to meet with you in person soon. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you all. Have a great conference.